welcome. Good to see you here.
Hey, you get to start us out because
Oh, wow, it's my turn to start. Hello and welcome to Building a U-Shaped Business with Georgie and Patty.
I'm Georgie.
And guess who I am? So welcome. Today is January 20th, Inauguration Day in the US, regular old Wednesday here in Canada. And we're here with episode 94. And I'm excited about our topic today about getting better at asking questions, making connections with people. I admire Georgie's ability to do this stuff. I love it when she is the person who is presenting on our show because I get to learn stuff too. So I'm excited to hear what Georgie has to say about this topic, and I'm just going to uh, turn the program over to her. If you're here with us live, if you have questions, pop them into the chat, and I'll take questions after the presentation. And take her away.
Okily dokily. Let me share my screen. Da-da-da. All right, move that thing out of my way. So, as we mentioned earlier, we are building a U-shaped business with Georgie and Patty. We are here most Wednesdays at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and we share our thoughts, ideas, information, tips on how to build a successful business that's based on your purpose, your values, your personality, really who you are. So today we're going to talk about, as Patty alluded to in the beginning, how to really use your language to reduce resistance in your conversations. And this really does comes down to questions. How do we communicate with people, particularly when we are looking at discovery calls or sales conversations in those particular spots? So when I was putting this stuff together, I thought, I'm going to look up the definition of like language and conversation. And so language, it came up with the principal method of human communication consisting of words used in a structured and conventional way and conveyed by speech, writing, or gesture. Sounds so simple and easy. And then conversation, I really love this one. It's just a talk, especially an informal one between two or more people in which news and ideas are exchanged. And isn't that really the basic concept of a sales conversation or a discovery call? It's really at its core, it's just an informal conversation where we're trying to get some information, maybe share some news and some ideas. And something happens though, I think, when we decide that, this is a discovery call, this is a sales conversation, and something between this language and conversation thing shifts. And often I hear from people that when I'm having this conversation, I'm just getting so much resistance. There's so much resistance from my clients. They won't do what I tell them to do. I don't understand it. And I'm trying to have this conversation with someone who could really use what I have. Like they need it. And I don't know why they're fighting me on it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Or maybe your conversations are all over the place. Like you feel like you're going in strong and then all of a sudden they are in left field. They're way off topic and you're not quite sure how to bring it back. So you pretty much don't, and conversation ends. Or you're talking and you're having this conversation and you just don't know how to make that link between what they're telling you, what they want, what you know they need, and how do I link that to what I actually do in a way that they can hear me. And we really lose sight of that. And this is where, when we're actually really intentionally constructing our conversations and paying attention to the language and the words that we're using, it's a lot easier to stay in rapport with people. It's a lot easier to really reduce that resistance. People, there's a little more flow. There's a little more know, like, and trust that starts to happen. You can also gain more clarity. So whether you're doing sales conversation, discovery calls, you're just in networking events, having conversations with people, you can kind of get a little more clarity about the other person. It also helps to keep the conversation on track. Or if it gets off track, you can bring it back to your focus a little more easily. and you have a much, much better understanding of what your future clients or even your current clients, what they want, how you can help them, and the way that they want you to help them. How do they like it best? This all comes from really intentionally using your words and constructing the conversation. So, often I think when we think about constructing a conversation, like what language should I use? We often think of word for word scripts. Can you just give me the script? Can you tell me what to say? I'm going to memorize it and I'm going to use this script with every single person I come into contact with. Can I just have that? Or maybe it's about, maybe you could just tell me, how do I tell people what they need? I know they need what I'm offering. So how can I tell them that? How can I tell them how awesome I am, about all the brilliant things that I do? Can you tell me how to do that? Oh, and so that they'll buy it. Or we think about, if I'm going to actually construct this conversation and construct my language, that it might be more about manipulative, persuasive language, and that we're going to try to convince people, which just leaves everybody feeling really icky and gross. And that's absolutely not what I'm talking about. So when I think about what it means to really construct your language in a conversation, it's starting out with knowing the intention of that conversation, or even the piece of the conversation that you're in. So is it a discovery call? Is it a sales conversation? Is it a, I'm just kind of getting to know you here kind of thing? But what's the intention of your conversation? And then you are actually the guide. You get to be the person that kind of is sort of leading people through this adventure. You're the, like, the adventure guide here. And when we're doing this, as you're creating the language, what you're really doing is, it's really a back and forth. So the language that you choose to use is based on the feedback that you get from the person across from you. What are they saying? How are they saying it? What are they looking for? This is how you construct your words in this conversation. So it's, and this is why a lot of times those word for word scripts often fail, because you're not really listening to the other person. You're just saying what you've memorized to say. But when we actually base our conversations on the feedback of the other person in front of us, you're going to end up with this happy human who feels seen, they feel heard, they feel understood. They may buy from you or they may not, but they will feel good about you because they'll feel like you value them as a human. And that can lead to referrals, that can lead to lots of really positive things. And you're also more likely to get the sale if it's a fit. And I think all of us have had those conversations with people where, maybe we're interested in something or someone's selling us something. It's just like, I don't actually think they're hearing what I'm saying. So there's a real, clearly they don't know what I need or what I want. All it is buy my stuff, buy my stuff. No, you need my thing. My thing is the best thing. My service is totally going to help you. I mean, you're the problem. Hello, I can help you because you're your problem. I'm not sure where that has ever worked. And I think we've all been in those situations, and yet it's so easy. Like, I know I've done this before where I hear somebody talking about, a problem that they might have. And I'm like, oh, I know what you need. You need to take my Y course. My Y course is exactly what you need. And I jumped to it without taking the time to really hear them. I'm just more telling them what to do. And very, very rarely does it ever work. So how do we actually be intentional when we are creating these conversations and looking at, what language do I want to use here? The first thing is to always be curious. Go in there and, really be open-minded, be free of assumptions or judgments and thinking that you already know the answer, because there's a possibility that you don't. And if we go in there kind of with this free, open mind, we'll probably learn some things that we don't actually know. There will be some stuff, I get it, we know what people need, we see how our stuff can help them, but if you go in with that in the first place, you're going to miss some things for sure. And ask questions. Do more asking and listening than you do talking. But that comes down to then, how do I know what to ask? What do I do? So you really want to know where your questions are leading when you're asking them, and not in the way of that manipulative leading kind of thing or control, but really this goes back to that intention. What's the intention of this conversation that I'm having? So if it's a sales conversation, I want to know what their problem is. I want to know if I can help them. I want to know if I want to help them. I want to know if it's a fit for them. Is how I do things, is it going to work for them? These are the things that I want to know in the beginning. So I want to ask questions that are going to give me that information. I want to uncover, what does this person want? What does this person need? And will my product or service fill it? And how can I do it in a way that works for them? So when I'm thinking about, wanting to know the outcome of the question, this is what I'm thinking. This is why I'm asking the question. It's not because I'm having a sales conversation. The reason I'm asking questions is to close a sale. That is not why I'm having this conversation. So the answers that you get are going to be your feedback. And then when we get these answers, we use this feedback to see if I need more information. Is there more information here that I need to find out? If you are following a word for word script, you will skip this part because you might have a feeling that, oh, I'm not really sure about this. I think I need some more information, but the next word that I've memorized doesn't fit into this, so you won't do it. Oops, where am I thinking? There we go. It helps you get more clarity and really understand the person in front of you and what they're looking for. It also helps to guide people to their own answers, where they start coming up with maybe some more, oh yeah, that is what I need. I haven't really thought about that. This is what I'm looking for. Oh, is that what you do? And this is through asking questions and listening and being a part of the conversation, which doesn't happen if you're doing this scripty kind of thing. It's about being present with people. And you might even overcome some concerns that the person might be thinking, but they haven't actually voiced yet. It might be something that's kind of, sitting in the back of their mind. And if you continue to ask questions and be present and use their language back, you might come up with some things that'll help you overcome objections, as people like to say. So here's some examples of how this might work. Let's just say you're having just a really easy conversation with someone. Maybe you're at a networking event. Maybe you could see a post on social media, something like that. So maybe someone is complaining about their relationship and you happen to be a relationship coach. And maybe they're just feeling a bit unhappy. So then we want to think about, well, what's a question I could ask to see if this person would be interested in an assessment call or a discovery call with me. So maybe it's something like, well, have you noticed that there's more strain and tension in your relationships since COVID? And they might stop a minute and they might go, well, it's definitely been more challenging since COVID, but really what I notice is that we're fighting more. Now you might think, oh, that's more tension, but they're saying fighting. So your language is, and so would you say then, since COVID, you've been fighting more? Oh, for sure. Would you like to fight less? What would it be like if you weren't fighting so much with your spouse? Oh, it would be so great. Well, this is the work that I do. I have a free assessment that might give you some clues into helping you fight less in your relationship. Would you be interested? Simple conversation, and I'm paying attention to what they're saying to me. Maybe you work with corporate people. You hear someone kind of talking about, there's some tension in the office, things aren't working so good. Oh, well, do you find that your staff are more anxious lately? Yes, I do, actually. Well, tell me what that looks like. Well, they just seem to be late. They're not as productive. They seem to be worried a lot. If they weren't like that, what difference would that make for you? Oh, we'd get more done. Morale would be better. Our culture would be happier. Well, this is kind of the work that I do. I have an assessment that might find out some ways that you could, have a happier culture. Would you be interested in that? Right? I'm paying attention and I'm listening. Maybe you help people create social media marketing plans. You hear someone talking. I just don't know what to post on social media. I don't know when to post. I don't know where to post. I don't know how to create the posts. Oh, well, would it be useful for you to have a strategy for creating your social media content? That would be great. And what would that look like? Well, I would know exactly what to do and when to do it. Well, I have an assessment that might help you with that. Would you be interested? Oh, sure, sounds great. Right? So it's paying attention to the people in front of you, listening, knowing what you do, and then just having a conversation to see if you can help. Often with the work that Patty and I do, we help people create assessments. So it's a really easy lead in to these discovery calls that can then move on into your sales conversations. But the answers that people provide for you, that is the language that you use to construct your conversations. That's why, again, I'm going back to these scripts and these people that want to know exactly what to say. It's really, really challenging to give someone exactly what to say. I can help you with questions, and you can get better at learning, what that flow is and what to do as things come back. But it's really about, I think, understanding the bigger concept of it and being present and paying attention and knowing where you're going, which again is often, it's not to close the sale. It's just to find out if you can actually help them and be of service with people. And when we go in with this kind of curiosity and we're looking with what they're saying as feedback, it often really helps us, because if we're asking questions, it stops us from assuming that the person is already on board with us. Because how many times have you been in a conversation with someone and they've moved right to closing you? They're like, oh yeah, well, this is great. So you're ready to sign up? Can I have your credit card? And you're like, how did we get there? I don't even know how that happened. And often that comes because someone is telling you so much about what they do and how they can help you, and they're not actually asking questions. And so you miss that piece, and then you fall out of rapport and you haven't even noticed that it's happened. And it can happen so fast. But questions will actually keep you in the game. And it doesn't mean, just as a little side note here, that the only thing that comes out of your mouth is a question. You actually want to be part of the conversation. This is a conversation. So I don't want you to take it the other way, where the only thing you do is ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Like, ask questions, get some feedback, have a conversation. It goes back to that definition of conversation. It's an informal way that we're speaking to gather some information and exchange ideas. And I think if you can hold that in your mind, it'll help you with, with your business conversations. It makes such a difference. But then we take their words. This performs or creates the construction that you're using. It provides the flow of the conversation, because they may answer a question. You may realize, I need some more information. So the conversation may be a little bit longer than you thought. Or it may be shorter. You may think, oh, I need 60 minutes for this conversation, the sales conversation or discovery call. And you may ask some really great questions and get some really great answers and realize this call is going to take me 15 minutes, right? But it's paying attention. If you're not paying attention to the flow, we often go into certain of what it's going to look like, and it doesn't have to, but the questions can really, really help if you're paying attention to what people are saying. So questions promote self-discovery. They help people feel like they are being heard, they are being seen, they feel more comfortable with you. They will start to look a little bit within themselves and start to realize on their own that you might be the person that could help them. They will start asking questions back, which is actually a really good sign. But when we go to statements, it's often the statements that can elicit this resistance in people. When I am telling people that this is what you need, you're the problem, here's how I can fix you, that rarely works. But if I ask questions where people might start to see those things on their own, it's a whole different feeling that comes to the conversation. And it's interesting to kind of go through, like, as you're doing your calls with people and even just regular conversations with family or friends, notice when you're asking questions or when you're just giving people a statement, when it's like, I know this, I'm right, here's what you need to do. And you'll probably see it a lot with family, like if you have kids or parents. I have, my mom is with me right now, and I really notice when I'm like, oh man, I'm not telling her what to do. Like, no, mom, this is what you need. I'm like, oh, maybe some little bit of questions to help her discover things on her own. And I will learn more than just this, it's like running into a wall. And I don't think any of us really like it. And I think it's something we probably do more than we actually realize. So this can be, it's a skill, and it takes practice, and it comes with this awareness of, oh, when am I asking questions? When am I listening? When am I just talking and running my mouth? And then wondering, I wonder if I implement a few of these things, what difference will it make, in my sales conversation and in my business, no matter what. Well, and even not only sales conversations, but even people that you might want to partner with, what makes a good partner? How would you know? Just really being curious. Super helpful. So my quote of the day is to let the conversation flow at its own pace. Don't try to rush it or control it. You need to let go and be part of the conversation. And even though this, you could probably say, I thought about when I put this up here, I thought, I'm saying that you kind of need to lead it because you need to know where your questions are going, but that doesn't mean you actually are controlling it. It's an and thing in there. And often it is a real part of letting go and being present and really being part of the conversation. Realize that you're a human and they're a human. And that didn't change just because this shifted to a sales conversation. You're still two humans having a conversation, seeing if you can help them. So your permission slip is that you can actually have sales and discovery calls like conversations with friends. They don't have to be hard. They don't have to be different. They don't have to be yucky. They can actually be something that you enjoy, that you want to do, that both parties leave feeling like that was a good use of my time. I'm happy about that. So that's what I got. Short and sweet today. Questions, thoughts, comments. Do any of these things happen to you where you're like, oh yeah, I don't know why people don't buy from me. I can see how awesome that I am. Why don't they? Or everyone is awesome.
I'll kind of chime in here. So I'm like, okay, not fair calling me out so often.
Oh.
It's just, interestingly enough, like when you talk about, kind of having an intention for the call, right? It's, I find that sometimes I find myself kind of jumping into calls without really thinking that through. I've got a couple of networky kind of connection calls happening in the next few days. And, I haven't really thought through beyond, oh, I'm going to talk to more people this year, so I'm going to set up some calls. It's like, okay, what's my intention here, right? Like, what do I want to have happen on this call? How do I make this call be a good use of both of our time kind of thing? So that's kind of my kind of practical takeaway for today, is to think that through and go, okay, what is my intention here? And what are some of the questions that I can ask in order to kind of lead us in that direction?
Exactly.
Because my some people I think are just more skilled and easier with people than others, and I'm not one of those people that's easy with people. I'm better with typing words, and so I often find myself stuck in conversations, especially if I happen to get a fellow introvert on a call where it's like it's going nowhere and it's going nowhere fast. It's just like just so helpful to have a little bit of an agenda in mind and some questions to kind of you know, an intention and some questions to kind of keep it flowing and to pick up on what's happening on the other side. So
And
appreciate that.
well, it's often good too, even if you have cautionary here, but it is good to sort of have some kind of key questions in your back pocket. You don't want to get attached to them like you would a script where you're like, oh yeah, these are all the questions I ask all the time. But often it does make it easier, especially if conversation's not the easiest thing, is if you do have a few conversations or a few questions in there for particular conversations, even if it's like, hey, like a sales conversation, here's a couple questions I'm going to ask. If it's a get to know you, here's a couple of things that I know I'm going to ask because I know where I'm going. But so being a little bit prepared, I think, is really good, especially if conversations aren't a natural kind of thing, especially with people you don't really know. It's nice to have some questions.
Yeah.
For sure. I find that it's funny. I've had a few clients that I've worked with, and they're like, well, I just need to know what questions to ask. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can help you with some questions. And please do not go into these things because I've seen people that, go through sometimes some personal development things or some kinds of trainings, and they have these questions, and every conversation with them is, well, what did you like best about that? Oh, well, I really enjoyed, going on vacation to Mexico. And what did you like best about that? Well,
Mm.
I really liked the people and the weather. And what did you like best about the weather? It's not that because you aren't part of the conversation, so it's easy to, well, I'm just going to keep asking, and this is not like that, it's a conversation. It's two ways. Oh, well, I really love the weather. Was it hot? It was like every day. I myself, I like seasons. Like it's a conversation.
I didn't do that exact thing, but this is here you're calling me out again. But I remember getting advice to have questions to ask people at a networking event, and I came up with the list of questions, and I practiced saying them before I went to the event. But what I didn't expect is that when I asked them, the people would turn around and ask me the question right back.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, I need to participate. And and I know that for some people who didn't do that, it felt like an interrogation.
Yes.
Because I'm asking them all these questions and I'm not really participating. I'm just getting through my list of questions because this is what I'm supposed to do. Or they'd ask me and I'd be like, I don't know.
I'm not really sure. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think, and this, it goes back to the intention. Like, what's the intention of this conversation that I'm having with someone? Maybe I want to get to know them better. I want to know why they got into the business that they're in. I'm curious to see if there's maybe a way that we can work together.
Yeah.
And even I think sometimes when you're having those kinds of calls with people, it's a nice, when you're reaching out to people, is to be like, hey, I saw your thing on LinkedIn. I'd love to have a call with you because it seems like there's some similarities. And I'd really just like to see if there's a way we might be able to kind of, work together in some way. Oh, great. Everybody knows the intention of the call.
Exactly.
And then it's like, okay, so if I have that in mind, so then some of my questions might be, so how long have you been doing this? What got you into this? Who do you typically work with? How do you work? Based on, like, I'm asking questions to see if there's a fit.
Yeah.
And it makes the questions easier, the conversations easier, and it's easier to kind of, to sort of, pull it back a little bit as well.
Yeah.
But if we just kind of, oh, I'm just going to connect with people. Okay, but why? Why am I doing this?
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes it's kind of like that hidden intention, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so we're going to have this chat. What's that about? What's my intention here? And it's just kind of like putting it on the table. It's like, here's why I initiated this call.
Yes.
It's like you say, it's like I'm seeing some similarities. I'm intrigued by what you're doing. You might have something that some of my clients could use, and maybe there's some ways for us to work together, refer business to each other, or something, right? And just kind of start from that place to set an intention and avoid having a long conversation about weather and pets and do you have any kids and
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's like
Something a
there's
little
a
deeper than Dale Carnegie questions.
little deeper, little deeper. Yeah.
Okay, we've got
uh,
chat stuff happening, don't we?
okay. Let's see. Oh, the obvious scripts are telemarketers. Yeah. um, I love how I now do sales conversations based on the feedback from us. My 45-minute amp up sessions often go 60 minutes. Last week, my 45-minute session took 2 hours. I asked a question and each answer was extremely long. I let the conversation flow, but found myself getting frustrated as it went longer and longer. How do I pull it back on track?
Oh, great question.
Yeah.
I
And
want to know
often,
too.
well, and often I think if you're finding that your 45 minutes are often going 60, one thing could be maybe I need 60 minutes is do the people that actually work with me, does it just require a longer conversation? If so, great. And then it can also come to how can I get better at asking better questions so that it doesn't go down this rabbit hole? How do I get clearer about what information do I need? What am I hearing back from them? And often, if you're really paying attention and you are listening to what they're saying, you can often come back with a question or, lead the conversation where it doesn't go down these really long rabbit hole um, answers. And some people just really really love to talk, and if it does get kind of off track and you're kind of like, okay, this is making me crazy, that's where you might say, you know what, that sounds really interesting, I'd really love to hear about it. And I realize, where time we're at now, and I said this was going to be 45 minutes and we're already into an hour. So if you want to, you could set up another time to talk about that, and then you could just say, but let me just bring this back to why you're here. You booked this session because you wanted to find out how you could get better at doing your presentations. So I want to provide value to you in this session. So let me ask you this, and then make sure, because you know that why am I asking this question? I realize I'm off track. Now, how do I get them back? And do it in a way where they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel understood. They don't feel like you're just cutting them off because you want to sell them something. So often thinking more about them, right? Oh my gosh, I realized I said this was 45 minutes. We've been on here for an hour and a half already. Let me bring this back to why you're actually here, and I think the more you do it, the better you get. And then looking at that conversation that took 2 hours and go back and where did it start to go off the rails? Where was the longer answer starting to happen? When you were starting to get frustrated, what was happening? Where did you kind of um, lose the role of being the guide and let the conversation take over? And that can often give you a lot of feedback and answers into how to do the next one a little bit differently. And sometimes it could have just been a situation where, you know what, this one just took 2 hours, and that's the way it is. But if you're starting to get frustrated with it, then we know you're probably definitely out of rapport because you're feeling frustrated. So you're not feeling connected to the person, and just getting better at paying attention to the feedback and asking better questions to bring it back, for sure. Because it does get frustrating when you're like, holy, why am I still here? Sorry, gotta go. Not that. um, yeah, this one here, it's easy for me to follow a person down their various bunny trails. Yeah, because it can be interesting. And I think, again, this is where that intention for the call comes into play. And it's okay to say, oh my gosh, that's super interesting. I'd love to talk more about that. And I realized that I got you on this call because we said we were going to talk about this. We've set, this amount of time. So let's go here. And I'd really love to hear about that at another time. I get like that too when people start talking about really interesting thing, and I'm like, ooh, let's do another call because I'd really love to hear about that. And then we can just talk about, your adventure race, which is just a conversation, right? Oh, this one's good too. Do other attendees find that women choose to have very different conversations from men? I found that men are easier for me because their careers and work are the biggest part of their life, and they're hoping to find useful connection at events, suppliers, and clients. And I think, again, this is paying attention to the person that you're talking to, you know? And it's like, okay, yeah. And I do find that men do tend to often be, depending, you know, sometimes more direct kind of thing, or even looking at how are you having the conversation with the men that and how are you showing up with the conversations with the women? Is the intention for the call different? You know, I like, these are the fun things that I like to do. I'm like, oh, why is it that these conversations seem to be straight, direct, to the point, and then these over here seem to be just, oh my gosh, I've learned so much about all their problems that I don't even want to hear about that. And I like to look at what am I doing in those two conversations, and is there a way I can shift that and do something a little bit different? Is there a question I can ask? Is there a way to pull it in? Am I just showing up a little more, maybe we'll call it a little freer with women? Oh, tell me, how's it going for you? Oh, you know, and you get into sometimes these conversations that are different, as opposed to, which again, I think then I've lost the intention of the conversation, why I'm there. But yeah, it's fun to pay attention and see, is it really a difference in men and women, or am I showing up differently and asking different questions, not setting the intention, not holding the conversation, not guiding as well? What do you think about that with the men and women?
I really dislike generalizations based on gender. I dislike it a lot, because while there may be, you know, certain traits that are stronger in women in kind of a general way, it doesn't necessarily apply to the specific human being that you're talking to. And I think that kind of your personality type, their personality type, and that has more to do with it. I've definitely had calls, even recently, with female clients that had a much more kind of male sort of conversational pattern, very much let's get down to business, let's talk about business, we're not here to be friends kind of thing. It's like, let's just, you know, get to the point and respond in a more what we would assume would be kind of a typical male way. So I think it varies, and I think, you know, I think people vary, and I think everyone's an individual, and I think that this is kind of related to everything you said today, about, you can have an intention, you can have kind of an agenda or a flow, you can have some questions in your pocket, but ultimately that is a unique human being that's on the other end of the screen from you, or the other side of the table, or however you look at it. And it's been my experience that it's better to not go into that with a bunch of assumptions, because often those assumptions get upended, you know.
Yes.
So
Exactly. Yeah, it goes back to that space, right, of being curious, being open-minded, trying to put everything you think you know, or you know, believe, to the side, and going in just being like, okay, I'm going to learn about the human in front of me, and the intention of the call is this, and let me see what information I need to, you know, to do this thing. And it's really good, because I find these kind of things too, it's like, oh yeah, look at what beliefs I'm holding, what judgments, what assumptions that I have, and how are these things affecting, you know, my conversation, my sales, all of those aspects of our business. And you know, it happens to me all the time too, and I'm, oh, what is this? Let me see, isn't that interesting? Am I really being curious and open here? Or do I really want to be right about this, and I really want to just tell you? And you know, hang on a second.
in my head again.
Yeah.
I have the answer. Why don't you just listen to me?
Why aren't you just listening to me? Why don't you just do it? You know, and it can often get really frustrating. And it's not like you're going to be perfect at it all the time, because, you know, I mean, if you find out how to do that, let me know, because I haven't quite discovered that. You know, but you get to that place where it's like, okay, what is going on here? Let me slow it down. Let me ask some questions, you know, often. And I think this happens with clients a lot too, where you're like, I told you, I've given you the answer. You've hired me to do this thing. Here's what it is. why aren't you doing it? And it's like, okay, let me back it up. My intention for this call is to figure out what is stopping this person from implementing the strategy, taking the steps. What questions do I need to ask for me to better understand the human being in front of me so that I can actually help them more? Instead of it's so easy like to get, well, hello, here it is. This is what I would do. I'm not sure why you don't do it. Oh wait, maybe because you're a different human being than me. So let me try to let's have this conversation and figure it out. And often we don't do that. It's easy to not do it. And that's where I think sometimes these conversations, they do take a little more patience, a little more awareness, a little bit. There is kind of this give and take, and there's a flow to it that you can't just script. It's part of the thing. I hate it when people are like, well, just can you give me an example of a sales conversation? Can you just give me the script? And I'm like, I'd rather just give you the blocks, actually, not the actual script, because I don't know who you're actually going to be in front of. I can give you sort of the blocks and the components, but I really don't want to give you the words because it depends. It depends, it depends. And I think that could be the tagline for everything we do. We have some Facebook comments here too. When I first started conversing with potential clients, like you said, the clients get a better aha moment for themselves, and they often ask about my program. Yeah, they self-discover, on their own. Years ago, I thought that there were magical sentences or words to use to convince people to buy, but I hate that. Yeah, and I think anytime you're thinking, give me the words that will convince people, I think that's indication number one that there might be an issue, because really none of us want to be convinced or manipulated or persuaded to do something that we don't want to do. And while that languaging doesn't work, sure, I think we see a lot of it. And then often what happens is someone buys something and then their buyer's remorse sets in, or they don't get the results and all of these things because it's not something that was an actual fit, but someone was just really, really good at basically doing what I'm saying to you, without that kind of human integrity piece behind it to sell you something. Because could you use this to convince and persuade? If you're really good at it, sure you could. But I also like to believe that on some level people can feel that, because it's not honest. The intention isn't pure. That's I want to believe that. Whether it's actually true, I'm not really sure, but I really want to believe that if we get better at paying attention even to ourselves, that when that stuff is happening, we get that little feeling of, I'm not sure, something's off here, and we start to pay attention to it. But yeah, there's power in questions and treating people like people. Like, I think, if you can take your business and your conversations with people in business or that you want to do business with, and just remember that they're human, and we're just sharing ideas and information, and we're just seeing if we can help you and if we're a fit. Like,
I think that's a big piece of it too. It's like, I think if you go in with the intention to find out if and how you can help somebody versus going in with the intention of how do I close this deal, that's going to change things a lot. Like, even being upfront with people, in the sales conversation, it's like, here's what we're here to do today, is to see if, I'm going to ask you some questions because I want to know whether or not I can help you, and to be like really focused on, okay, how do I get this information that I need so that I can answer that question? And then that's going to become, you need questions for that. Like you absolutely have to ask questions for that. So they're going to have those self-discovery kind of moments and insights that they almost can't help but not. As soon as they have to, really put words to what they're looking for and what's going on, like that whole process is just so helpful. If you've ever been in a conversation where the person is just really good at asking questions, if you ever worked with a coach, for example, or a therapist, and they ask, just the right questions that have you stop and think, and it's so clarifying and it's so helpful. That's why sales conversations can actually be valuable, wonderful things to have with people when it comes from that kind of intention. It can be super helpful for the person you're having a conversation with, even if it turns out that you're not a fit.
Exactly. And fun. You can actually enjoy them. Like if you're thinking to yourself that I hate sales conversations suck, I hate doing them, I've never had a fun sales conversation. If you switch this a little bit, you might actually, well, you will realize that, oh, that was actually fun or enjoyable, or at least a whole lot less painful. Like, I think that's one of my favorite quotes or testimonials or whatever you want to call it, that one of our clients was like, I actually like sales conversations. It's easy, and really it's just a conversation with somebody. Like,
and it's more than that, right? It's changing how you think about them and how you
yes.
define a sales conversation and what you believe the experience is going to be like and how you feel about yourself in that conversation. Like, it makes a world of difference to show up on one of those calls saying, with this thought of, well, maybe I can help somebody, and this is an opportunity
Yes.
for me to be a coach or a consultant and to do my work in the world, and perhaps this is my next client that's going to be on the line, or perhaps it's somebody else's client, and we'll have a nice conversation, we'll both learn something, and it's all going to be great, right? Versus, oh crap, it's sales conversation time to find my plaid suit. It's like,
time to close some people.
always be closing.
That's right. Yeah.
Get my manipulative script out here.
Exactly. The script would work so much better if the person in front of you had their script too. Like, here's what I'm going to say, and here's what you're going to say. Like,
well, that's how you throw the telemarketers off. You ask them, what was that you asked me a couple minutes ago?
exactly. It's so fun. I like this. If you had told me a year ago that I would love having sales conversations and the people I'm talking to also have fun, a year ago would have said you were crazy to say that I would have fun and they would too. Yeah, it's just a little reframe there, a little different. And I'm not even sure if it's a different way of doing things. It's actually, I think, more of a natural way of doing things. And it's unlearning the way that people say we're supposed to do things and shifting that stuff instead of remembering that we're humans. Like, we are people. As a human, how would I like to be talked to? Not.
I think too, it's like part of it like, I know the big switch for me came when I noticed, how much I really loved having conversations with my clients and how much I enjoy our calls, I enjoy our interactions. And it's like, what's the difference? It's like, those are my clients. These are the kinds of people that I work with in terms of their personality, in terms of who they are, enjoyableness to work with, chemistry in the call, whatever you want to call it. It's like, those are the people I'm going to work with. And then it just kind of tweaked in my mind. It's like, oh, so the sales conversations that I have with people are going to be like that. It's just I'm having a conversation with a client I haven't met yet.
Exactly.
And it's different. And part of that is to figure out whether or not that easy chemistry kind of thing exists or not. And sometimes that's really part of like maybe the bigger part of the fit. Like, when we're in a relationship-based business and what we're selling is like, hey, how would you like to give me money? We can spend time together and talk. It's like, you need to kind of like each other, have some rapport. There's got to be something that feels positive about that interaction, right? If it doesn't feel positive in the sales conversation, it's probably not going to feel positive in the actual coaching sessions or consulting delivery, as long as you show up as the same person in both of those kind of events, right? So it's kind of like I approach sales conversations, sort of assuming that I'm meeting with a client. Like, it's like their client. And this is the first part of our client kind of arrangement, is we're going to sort out what needs to happen and how, you know, how we're going to work together, and if we're going to work together. And that's kind of, it's almost like a first client session. Has a different feel to it when I look at it that way. And then my focus becomes, hey, how can I help you, right? And it's like, what do you need? What does this all look like? That kind of thing.
Yes.
Changes everything.
I think that's such a good point, because when the focus is on how can I help you? How can I help the person that's in front of me, instead of I need to close this sale, which is all about me. There's a big, huge shift when you're focusing on just how you can be in service to the person in front of you. They feel it, you feel it, makes the conversation easier. I think we put pressure on ourselves when you go into it thinking, I got to get this client, I got to meet my numbers, I got to meet my sales goal, I've got to hit my targets, like all of those things. It's added pressure, instead of going, I know where I'm going, I know what I'd like to have, like it's there. And I'm just, right now, I'm having this conversation with a person to see if I can help them, to see what they need, and if I can be of service to them. It shifts everything for sure. So yeah, I love it. Which is why we have discovery sessions too. So if anyone struggles with talking to people, having conversations, wondering, you know, where some of your blocks or obstacles might be, we love to chat about that stuff. We really, really do. You know, and I think that's what we do when we have our discovery, whatever you want to call it. I'm not even sure what it's called on our website, but anyway, we have a thing there where you can book a call with us. And it really is just about chatting to see how can we help you? What can we help you with, even in that call, to see one little thing that might shift how you're doing things, or connecting with people, or whatever that might look like. Because it's fun. It's super, super fun. That's for sure. Do you know what we're talking about next week?
No.
It's a surprise.
Yes, next week is, it will be a surprise. The only thing that we know for sure is that it's my turn to talk.
Right.
If you have a suggestion for something you'd like to hear me talk about, I'm all ears right now.
Yes. Is there
I'm
anything?
open.
That's really good.
What would be helpful?
What would be helpful to get your business moving forward? Cake.
I'll share my coffee cake recipe with you if that's what you want, but I'm thinking probably not. I make pretty good cake, but
I love coffee cake.
I have this coffee cake recipe that I really love, because it's like 95% sugar. My judge of a good cake is that it's very, very sweet. So
So what is the connection between a really good cake recipe and really compelling content?
well, actually there is a connection, and maybe that way to phrase it is, you know, content marketing kind of like, it's a little bit like baking in that way, that it does follow a recipe. So there's definitely a connection, and it's this, you know, it's this framework thing, right? Like,
Yes.
It's about frames. Like, it's frames. They're empty, and you can put things in it. It's kind of like the sales conversation structure, connection call conversation structures, sales page structures, content structures, video presentation structures. It's like the structure is helpful to have a framework, but not to have the rigidity of, you say this, then you say this, then you say that. Like there's that cookie cuttery, templatey, canned, no life in it kind of thing. And then there's a framework that's just, it's a support, and it follows principles, and it works, and there's just a lot of leeway in how you use it.
Exactly. So. Yes. I like it. Yeah, recipes are guidelines, conversation frameworks are guidelines. Yeah, it's the frame, and then depending on the person you're talking to, or what, you know, which I think comes down when we're doing the like when you talk about the content marketing and, you know, things that you're posting out on there too, it's who are you talking to and speaking to that person.
Yeah. I mean, the frame is ABC. Attention grabbing headline, something in the body that, you know, provides some education and call to action at the bottom. It's like those are the blocks. 1, 2, 3. Good content marketing is gonna have those 3 blocks. But what goes into it? Oh, sky's the limit. There's a zillion different ways of doing it. But good effective content will fit into that frame.
Exactly. And how fun is that to have that much freedom and possibility?
Yeah.
Woo!
Woohoo! So
no suggestions in the box at the moment, other than cake. So it'll be a surprise, but we know it will be useful. It will be something that will help you to build your
it'll have something to do with words and messaging or frames or strategies or Venn diagrams. It's a Patty topic. That's what we're talking about next week.
That's right. Excellent. I love it. I love it. Woo.
All right. Oh. Email us a suggestion. Love to hear it.
Great. Great.
All right. Have an amazing day, weekend, and we'll see you back here next week. Same bat time.
Same bat channel.
Bye.